The knocking started at 2 a.m. 3 taps. Pause. 3 more. My sister thought it was mice, until we found the hidden letter behind our attic walls. Our grandmother sealed it there in 1972, 1 year before she fled this house and never returned. Inside, a confession about a missing 7-year-old girl, about bones found in the walls, about something that still calls to children in the darkness. The letter ended with a warning we should have heeded, because last night, the knocking reached my sister's bedroom door. The envelope was yellow with age. Emma, her younger sister by 3 years, held it like it might disintegrate. They'd pulled back the attic insulation, looking for the source of the scratching sounds. Found a gap in the wall instead. And behind that gap, wedged between studs that were probably original to the house, this letter. Emma's hands were shaking. The handwriting on the front was beautiful. Old-fashioned cursive that looped and swirled. No address, just a name. Catherine Marshall. That was their grandmother's maiden name. Their grandmother who'd died when Mom was 12. Emma looked at her, waiting. She took the envelope. The paper felt brittle, like it had been there decades. The house was built in 1947. Grandma Catherine had lived here until 1973. Then she'd moved to the apartment downtown. Never came back. Mom always said Grandma refused to even drive past the old place. You don't hide a letter inside a wall by accident. You don't seal it behind insulation and drywall, unless you want it to stay hidden. Unless you're terrified someone might find it. The attic was cold. March in Ohio meant the heat barely reached up here. They'd been up here an hour. The scratching had started 3 weeks ago, right after they'd moved in. Mom had inherited the house when Great Aunt Linda passed. The place needed work, but Mom said it was free and they needed free. The scratching was different, deliberate. 3 taps. Pause. 3 more. Emma had heard it first. 2 nights ago. She'd come downstairs at breakfast pale, hadn't slept, said something was in the walls. Mom had blamed mice, but mice don't tap in patterns. Mice don't pause like they're waiting for an answer. So they'd come up here, pulled back insulation, found the gap, found the envelope, found whatever Grandma Catherine had hidden 70 years ago. Emma was staring at her. That mix of curiosity and dread. She could feel it too. That weight in her stomach. That sense of standing on the edge of something. She opened the envelope. The letter inside was folded twice. Same yellow paper. Same elegant handwriting. The date at the top made her breath catch. October 9th, 1972. That was a year before Grandma moved out. She unfolded it carefully. Emma leaned in close. The attic bulbed through harsh shadows. She started reading. The letter began without preamble. To whoever finds this, I pray it's family. I pray you'll understand why I couldn't speak of this. Why I couldn't tell Margaret. Margaret was their mother. Would have been 11 in 1972. Something happened in this house. Something I can't explain. It started in September the 14th. I remember, because it was Margaret's birthday. Then at 2 in the morning, I heard the knocking. 3 taps from inside the walls. Downstairs. In the kitchen. Emma's face had gone white. She'd heard the knocking at 2 in the morning too. Same pattern. The letter went on. Grandma Catherine had thought it was pipes, then animals. But it continued. Every night. Same time. Same pattern. Moving through the house. Kitchen one night. Living room the next. Getting closer to the bedrooms. Getting closer to Margaret. She'd called a contractor. He'd found nothing. The knocking continued. Then she'd started finding things. A child's shoe in the attic. Old style. From decades earlier. A hairbrush in the basement, with long red hair. Nobody in the family had red hair. A photograph tucked behind the bathroom radiator. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, standing in front of this house. But the photograph was from the 1920s. The girl was smiling, but her eyes looked wrong. Too dark. The letter's tone shifted, became urgent. I started researching, went to the library, the historical society, asked old neighbors. Nobody wanted to talk about it. But Mrs. Chen next door finally told me. She'd lived here 50 years. Remembered when the Marshalls lived here before us. Different Marshalls. No relation. They had a daughter, Elizabeth, red hair, 7 years old. In 1926, she disappeared. Just vanished from her bedroom one night. They searched for months. Never found her. The parents moved away. The house sat empty until 1945. She stopped reading. Looked at Emma. The scratching in their walls was the same scratching Grandma Catherine had heard. 50 years apart. Same pattern. Same progression through the house. Emma's room was at the end of the hall. Same location as Margaret's room would have been. Same place the knocking had been heading in 1972. The letter continued. I decided to investigate. Thomas was away on business. Margaret was at her friend's house. I was alone. I went to the attic, found the gap in the wall where the knocking seemed loudest. I pulled back the insulation, shone my flashlight inside. The handwriting became jagged, unsteady. There was a space back there, between the walls, about 3 feet deep, and in that space, pressed against the far side, was a child's dress, red fabric, the style from the 1920s, and inside the dress, still buttoned, bones. Emma made a sound, something between a gasp and a whimper. They both looked at the wall, at the gap they'd just exposed. The same gap Grandma Catherine had found. She forced herself to keep reading. I didn't touch anything. Called the police. They came, investigated, confirmed what I'd found. Elizabeth Marshall, missing for 46 years, found inside her own house. The police ruled it an accident, said she must have been playing, crawled into a gap, got stuck, couldn't get out. But the letter didn't end there. The police took her remains, sealed up the wall properly, but the knocking continued. Every night, 2 in the morning, moving through the house. I couldn't stay here, couldn't subject Margaret to this. We moved out a month later. I never told her why, but I'm leaving this letter, because whoever lives here next needs to know. She's still here, still looking, still trying to find her way home. The letter ended with a postscript. I found one more thing. In the Historical Society archives, a diary entry from Elizabeth's mother, from 2 weeks before she disappeared. Elizabeth had been having nightmares, saying someone was in the walls, saying they were calling her, trying to get her to come inside. Her mother thought they were just dreams. She was wrong. They sat in silence. The attic suddenly felt smaller. Emma's breathing was shallow. The bulb above them swayed slightly. Neither of them had touched it. She folded the letter carefully. Her hands were steady, but her mind was racing. The scratching they'd heard, the pattern, it was the same. Exactly the same. 50 years later, still happening. Emma spoke first. What do we do? They could leave, but Mom had nowhere else to go. This house was it. And would leaving even matter? Elizabeth Marshall hadn't left. Hadn't moved on when her body was found. She was still here, still in the walls, still knocking. She thought about the diary entry, about a 7-year-old girl, hearing voices in the walls, being called inside, following that call and never coming back, trapped in the dark, in that narrow space, no one hearing her, dying alone while her parents searched everywhere else. How long had she lived? Hours, days. And then, even after death, even after being found, still trapped, still knocking. Emma was looking at the gap in the wall. Should we look? She didn't want to, but they needed to know. She stood up. Emma stood too. They approached the gap together. She pulled out her phone, turned on the flashlight, shone it into the space between the walls. The beam illuminated rough wood, dust thick enough to look like fog, and there, about 4 feet back, something pale. It was fabric, old fabric. The color had faded, but might have been red once. Might have been a child's dress. And beneath it, shapes that could be bones. The light wasn't good enough to be sure. Emma grabbed her arm. There's something moving. She looked, strained to see. At first, nothing. Then yes. Movement. Something that caught the light. Reflected it back. Like eyes. She jerked the phone away. They backed toward the stairs. The knocking started. Right then. 3 taps. From inside the wall. From the space they'd just looked into. Pause. 3 more. Emma bolted for the stairs. They practically fell down the ladder. Didn't stop until they were in the kitchen. The knocking continued above. Deliberate. 3 taps. Pause. 3 more. Mom came in from the garage, saw their faces. What happened? She couldn't answer. Emma was crying. She held up the letter. Mom took it, read it while Emma cried against her shoulder. Watched Mom's face go from confusion to disbelief to recognition. Mom finished reading. I heard it too. When I was a girl. The knocking. Mom would never talk about it. I thought I'd imagined it. She looked at the ceiling. It's real then. It was always real. The knocking stopped. The silence felt worse. They called the police. 2 officers arrived within 30 minutes. They went to the attic, came back down. We didn't see any remains. There's old fabric back there. Could be anything. Animals nest in walls sometimes. Martinez was talking. Chen kept looking at the ceiling, like he was listening for something. She showed them the letter. Martinez read it. If there were remains found in 72, they'd have been removed then. What you're seeing is probably just remnants. It was reasonable. It didn't explain the knocking. but it was what they were going to get. The officers left. That night, the knocking started at 2 in the morning. She was awake, had been awake for hours. It began downstairs. In the kitchen. 3 taps. Pause. 3 more. Then movement. Up the stairs. Down the hallway. Getting closer. She went to Emma's room. Her sister was awake, staring at the wall. The knocking was right there, behind her headboard. Emma's face was white. She climbed into bed with her. They sat together, listening. The knocking continued all night, moving around Emma's room. At dawn, it stopped. Mom made coffee. They sat at the kitchen table. None of them had slept. Mom spoke first. "We can't stay here." She'd been thinking the same thing. They couldn't risk it. Whatever was in the walls wanted something, and it was focused on Emma, but they couldn't afford to leave. Mom's job barely covered expenses. This house was paid for. Free. They had nowhere to go. They were trapped. Just like Elizabeth. She thought about the letter. Elizabeth Marshall had disappeared in 1926. Her body had been found in 1972. But the knocking had started before she died. Started with her nightmares. Someone in the walls. Calling to her. Which meant Elizabeth wasn't the first. She was just another victim. Something that lived in the spaces between. And sometimes it called to children. She made a decision. "I'm going back up there. We need to understand what this is. Maybe if we understand, we can stop it." It sounded absurd. But what else was there? The only option was to face it. To look into that gap. To ask it to leave Emma alone. She went up alone. The attic was dim. Morning light through the window. She approached the gap, knelt down, looked into the darkness. The fabric was still there. The shapes that might be bones. But something else too. Words, scratched into the wood. Crude letters, carved with fingernails probably. It said, "Don't come inside. Don't listen. They lie." She understood then. Elizabeth had left a message. Trapped in the dark, dying slowly. She'd carved a warning. About what had called her there. About voices that had promised her something. They'd lied, so she'd carved a warning. For whoever came next. Don't come inside. Don't listen. They lie. But who would see it? Only someone who opened the wall. And by then, it might be too late. She took photos. Documented everything. Went downstairs. Showed Mum and Emma. They read Elizabeth's warning. This wasn't about Elizabeth. She was trying to help. The knocking wasn't her. It was whatever had taken her. Whatever still lived in the walls. Still called 2 children. Elizabeth had been its victim. Now she was trying to prevent more. They made new plans. Called contractors. To seal. To fill every gap in every wall with foam insulation. To leave no spaces. It cost money they didn't have. Mum borrowed from friends. The work took 3 days. They stayed at a motel. When they came back, the house felt different. Quieter. More solid. That night, 2 in the morning, they waited. Nothing. No knocking. Emma slept through the night for the first time in a month, but she knew it wasn't over. The gaps were gone. But there were other spaces, other houses. Whatever had called to Elizabeth was still out there, still waiting. She thought about all the children who'd heard voices in the walls. How many families had lived with unexplained disappearances? How many houses held bones in their hidden spaces? She kept the letter, kept the photos, posted it online, shared Catherine's story and Elizabeth's warning. Got responses from across the country. Other people who'd heard knocking, who'd found gaps, who'd lost children. Patterns emerged. Old houses mostly, built before 1950. Houses with spaces in the walls. Perfect hiding places. She started a database. Warned people. Helped families seal their walls. Saved Emma. Maybe saved others too. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Stories from Chaos to a New Beginning. Your support helps us bring more stories that shine light into dark places. Have you ever heard something in your walls? Something that sounded like it was calling to you? Listen to Elizabeth. Don't come inside. Don't listen, they lie. Because in the end, what matters most isn't whether we can explain the darkness, but whether we're brave enough to face it, to warn others, to protect those who come after. That's how we honor the lost. That's how we save the living.